Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the final session of our Latvian Business Angels Network Angels School, designed not only for those who are in Riga, but also for our online audience as well. I must say once again, thank you to our sponsors, to our donors, and to organizations that are supporting LATBAN and current Angels course. First of all, it is the United States Agency for International Development and Pyxera Global company who are managing such kind of activities. It is the Ministry of Economics of Latvian Republic. They are our constant supporter. And I want to mention them, SEB Banka. Unfortunately, this time we are meeting in the different venue, but I hope that you will enjoy that. What we already covered through the first 3 sessions. Public relations, your image as an angel investor, and how to perfectly do your networking and present yourself and your portfolio companies to other prospective investors. Next, the financial topic, how to assess finance of startups, how to understand their business and financial model, and how not to be fooled by ungrounded projections. And last but not least, we talked about term sheet, how to understand what's it all about, how to make it in your favor, in startup founders' favor, and how to make the win-win instead of trying to bite unnecessary share of the startup company. Today's topic is very special and personally very interesting for me, because today we are talking about technical due diligence and assessing the hidden part of the startup you cannot immediately expect, inspect, and understand. Technical due diligence. Let me please remind you before we start that this evening we propose to spend once again in this warm company, to move to Rione Pizzeria, and they usually, and this time as well, offering us unlimited pizza. We checked this before and their pizza is really unlimited. So you can eat whatever and that doesn't counting the pieces of pizza actually. Let me introduce our today's speaker, Aigars Martins from Emergent company. This is an international software company with a very interesting and large office here in Riga, as well as a lot of other countries, and the headquarters is, I suppose, in Sweden, right?
London.
London, that's great.
I mean, it's a tax thing, so Ireland,
the stage
physically C-suite is in London.
Please.
Okay.
The stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Hello. So I'm not sure if I can be heard online, but I assume that I am. So yeah, I will speak about technical due diligence and technology due diligence for startups a bit. So a bit about myself. So I'm speaking here. So before working at Emergent, almost starting 5 years ago, I was working also at Microsoft. I had a very interesting role at Microsoft where I was technical evangelist for 3 years in Latvia and covering some parts of Baltics actually as the technology persona, and then part of Central Eastern Europe. And I started my career originally as a software engineer working with actually ERP software and building various things and modules, like starting like mobile apps for warehouses and e-commerce sites and whatnot there and so on. And from there I moved essentially now back actually to engineering side of things after my Microsoft things. And personally I play a bit of tennis and I do a bit of also gaming with Steam Decks and whatnot. And during my career, as part of my works, I have lived in Estonia and United States. So my second job at Microsoft actually was in Estonia, working with folks who also were working in Skype. And my first hiring manager there now also runs a technology due diligence company, actually. there. And he still lives in Estonia, but he moved there with Microsoft actually as part of acquisition to do integration of a Skype company into Microsoft ecosystem when acquisition happened. Okay. Then one of the things that I did there as part of my career is there used to be a program. Now it's called like Microsoft for Startups, where Microsoft is giving some kind of benefits and free software and licenses for various companies. At that moment, I was responsible for approving or disapproving companies who applied for BizSpark in Latvia and at some points in my career also in Lithuania. So essentially, I checked if these were real companies, what they were doing, and I also tried to assess whatever it makes sense to them to get some free stuff from Microsoft and how they will try to use it. So it was a bit of guesswork. And one of the things naturally is that I tried to check first, always for these companies, what was on their website and how they looked and presented themselves online. So when you apply to these programs, it's nice that you have a website already set up for you. Then or some kind of online presence. It doesn't have to be per se website. It could be also like site on, I don't know, what are these days, platforms like F6S probably still alive, or there's various registries for startups and companies and whatnot. Then as part of my job now, I am working also with a lot of assessing our potential customers, helping to figure out their problems and also seeing if there is something that we can offer to them, can we work together, and helping them on the technology pieces. As part of the jobs, at some moments over the course of the last 5 years, there are also various startups with whom we worked or were exploring partnerships together in various stages of fundings. Of course, it's also a very big question whether they should go for external partners for their technology matters and what are their motivations to do that and so on. And it typically works with companies who already have some kind of funding available. But there are also a lot of interesting ways how these partnerships could be arranged and they're done in the practical life. So, okay, so why does it happen? So first thing is that mostly it happens in practical sense as part of mergers and acquisitions processes. So I try to illustrate that with two suns colliding kind of thing. Also, some of the venture firms require that they are doing that, and typically venture firms will use their own people to do that. At least I think in this region, but sometimes they might also go for external partner to do these assessments. I know that for bigger companies and enterprises, if they have their venture arms and so on, they might also have external partners who help them with these activities. We have also been involved in some such partnerships with some of our clients, where we are trying to help them how to assess these technology due diligence topics and what is needed there for these companies. In practical sense, I would say that there is no format how it's done. It could be done in half an hour call, some whiteboarding session with the people from a company. It could also be a very longer process. So I made a bit of small joke for IT people, I guess here, is that if you're trying to look, then most of IT stuff is done through, in terms of auditing and reviewing things, is done based on there's ISACA organization standards, and they bought also CMMI, which is maturity model thing, some years ago, coming from US military. But ultimately, there is no standards and in terms of how companies are doing that. And it also really depends on life cycles. And what I wanted to highlight is that if you are looking at later stages, and this is a bit of approximation, but based on more on, I would say, today's economic climate, then we are assuming, and I'm lightly matching also this against product market fit and product development life cycle. So if you have, according to financing rounds, but ultimately the idea here is that depending on how well you are financed and where you are, there might be different things that you are looking for as part of this technical due diligence, what are important for your product and for the company, what's happening there. So first thing is that in angel rounds, probably there won't be a lot of technology things that are really built, or they're in very early stages, and a lot of things actually You just need to validate and figure out whatever there is a product traction. This company does anybody need these products, and what really is the products that you can sell and you have ability to sell, and get some essentially business out of it. So at this moment, your evaluation is more involved around team itself and how they present themselves, how they work well, and what is happening there. Then for seed rounds, there is more about assessing the potential of how this team is working and what are the things they are laying as their foundations. I will speak about some things that could be relevant also to suggest to companies to use, but tread with care. And then in the growth stage, you already, hopefully you have some kind of product market fit, and the idea is about how you can grow your product, get more clients, sell more, add features quickly, react to market changes or things that are happening in reality. And then so you are mostly focused on scaling the product offering and also ability to add new features and essentially grow and capture the market. And then in later stages, essentially it's more like proper enterprise scenario, and you are looking at maintainability, compliance. Well, compliance might be, depending on your industry, might be relevant already earlier, but essentially it's more about assessing your stability of your platforms and products that are inside of your things that the company has built. Of course, it's also a very sensitive matter for people who are responsible for technologies in a company, so they might treat it very personally and think about it like their evaluation thing. But what I want to highlight here, it's in a way it's a bit of like auditing, but it's not really an audit in the sense that you need to pass with flying colors and so on. It's more about evaluating and reflecting and looking back on what you are having. However, at the same time, for companies who also are growing and are able to attract financing and so on, they are also trying to think about in terms of doing these exercises like 6 months before, just to prepare themselves for real deal, maybe by these fundraising companies and so on, so that they are ready and they already have some plans in place to tackle the issues. So yeah, and then like for all good CTOs, I guess, out there, it's generally, I found this on LinkedIn, but the idea here is that there could be some kind of set of questions that people need to be able to answer and elaborate. What is important, so why are they doing what, how they create business value, also how they serve like product roadmap and these product goals. How do they treat technical debt? I will have a thing on explaining what it is a bit later. And now coming to later stages, are they investing already in scalability, or they are still trying to figure out product market fit? So because, and where they are in terms of their life cycle elements. And the very big question, which we also see now with some venture investment activities even today, is build versus buy is always a very big question. Because, for example, just from real life experience, so we have it's more about venture investment for one organization, and we help them to assess essentially what kind of technologies they should use for building their next, let's call it product, spin-off idea. So they are establishing new legal entity and whatnot. And the question which is on top of mind for their CTO is actually always like, why should I build something if I can buy something ready from market and a bit customize it and so on? And that's the question what will be your competitive advantage and where you will have it. And that is something, if you build, then you are limited by vendor choices for you, or you want to make your own choices, which is, yeah, so buy is vendor choices and build is where you have your own choices. But it's also way, way more expensive, potentially speaking, but then a bit more freedom. So regarding technical debt, so it's not sure how many of you are related to software engineering, but in software engineering, technical debt is always a big topic for developers at least. They always say, we always have it, it will be always there. And sometimes we can accept it and we can have fixes, but then we might have some challenges and need to overcome it. And especially when you are building a company, you will have a lot of technical debts. That's natural and expected, I would say. If you don't have it, then you probably are over-engineering something. There is a joke about Google, that if you are building something at Google, then they try to build like at Google scale and very large and stable systems, but it means also that they are very slow to make things happen initially, and then it's very hard for them to adapt and change things. So there needs to be find a balance, and at the end of the day, it's about always making trade-offs against business risks. Because developers will always say, oh, I need to spend a lot of time to fix technical debt, but then you need always to figure out whatever, is that really a priority, and can you live with it? So if you don't have yet product market fit and don't have market pull for your product, maybe you still need to iterate and iterate until you find something new. And of course, as I said, you can accept it as well, like this. So that's also rather works as well. In terms of process, so it's typical, I would say, consulting engagement process, so nothing really peculiar about it. What is interesting is that it would be good if there would be availability of some kind of assets to read before having these sessions, so that they are shorter and more focused. But ultimately, this process, as I mentioned, could be overall starting from this discussion session. That session might be 40 minutes or half an hour call, but it also could be longer if there is more needs to find it. Typically, it will be longer if there is as part of M&A activities, as part of figuring out how to integrate this company into your business. But at the same time, I might ask a question here as well. So do you think Microsoft did the technical due diligence on buying LinkedIn? So when LinkedIn was being acquired and Skype lost its diva status in Microsoft as being the most expensive acquisition by Microsoft, so was Microsoft doing technical due diligence on LinkedIn?
They certainly did some, but it was not so important for them because first of all, they bought the team and the audience.
And also they know actually a lot about technologies which are used there, because a lot of LinkedIn employees were sharing their technology pieces. It was available in public blogs, and they had understanding. And in reality, it was a bidding war. Same as with GitHub, it was bidding war with other Google to prevent Google from buying this company and other competitors, whatever, Facebook it could be, Meta. And so technical due diligence might be smaller factors than a lot of other reasons actually for buying companies. But also the question is if they trust essentially the team and how much they know them and how much they essentially know about what's happening there. So yeah. But what matters is essentially is in the context is that if you are building a company where you believe technology is your asset, then you need to invest to make this technology world-class, and then it becomes an asset. If you don't invest, then there might be some challenges with that. You might be saying that it's world-class, but whatever it is, let's see. And it's actually not that hard. Some preparational pieces that in pre-read materials what people might be looking at is like what's your business model, so is there some information about it, then what's your funding story and in how well you were funded, are you like bootstrap company, how much you did, because it provides valuable context. Where the shortcuts might be taken, have you always had like very well-funded teams and build it, or you used also a lot of like outsourcing partners to build some of your products, and you know that some of elements of that are throwaways. That's all fair and square. And then what are maybe investor expectations from your investors, and what are the story you're telling? Do these things match? And what's also very important is do you have some prototypes of your products, and where is your user interface? I just, as preparation for the slide, I just asked V0 to create me some kind of very boring website thing with the code and so on, but ultimately, do you have some prototypes?
Yeah. Ask on the previous slide, what is the system on the screenshot? It's some kind of copilot for developers?
Yes. So that's a portal, v0.dev, where anybody can go for free, and you can ask in chat like questions, what kind of website you want to build, and then it will generate you code and preview of that website. So okay, so this like I used one of the like default prompts here. But you can also ask, like, build me some website for, I don't know, managing car fleet or supply chain, and then it will create also like nice enterprise boxes there and so on. And you can ask, it will generate code for you. You can also ask it to change libraries, what to use, and what programming languages and other things. So it's a very useful booster for like getting off the ground on some things. And then in background, we have naturally Alex Osterwalder's business model canvas from Strategizer. Then, yeah, documentation parts. Initially, in startups, I don't expect that they will have a lot of documentation, and it's normal, but as team grows, and essentially it's a function of a team size. So the bigger the team, the more documentation you probably need to have, because people cannot have direct communications anymore. So, and what are the assets they might be having? So it's a question about what architecture diagrams they might be having, some kind of metrics they're tracking for their users, or I don't know, technical metrics like deployments or health statuses of their services, whatnot, and yeah. And also, if they are, let's say, in a very compliance-driven industry, they might already have some pre-created templates for filling in some kind of compliance surveys and answers, and so just to speed up the process of deploying themselves in these various customer environments. Yeah, and then in the sense of what this exercise needs to find out, and what are the answers that people who will read the assessment, they will try to look at in the final report. So they will be looking for people. So what is the team capabilities? Are they dedicated? Are they working maybe part-time on something, and then doing a bit of technology work for the startup in terms of technology leadership, and essentially they're managed outsourced team. That might be also a scenario. So for outsourcing, well, Latvia is rather expensive, but let's say, you know, the cheapest places probably these days would be something like in Vietnam, Philippines, or in Africa. South America there is a language barrier, and if there is no barriers, then it's the same as in Europe. So, yeah. Then big risks in terms of natural red flags. What would be some things to be notified here? Nothing will be perfect, but yeah. And very important thing is if they are saying some kind of loud claims, are they really keeping these promises? So essentially that's where this technology magic box is ultimately, because people might be saying, oh, I have built like compression algorithms that compresses everything super fast into super small sizes. Can they really do that? Could it be tested and proved? So these are the questions essentially that needs to be validated. So how their marketing messages connect with what they really have, and what is the gap from their future vision versus where they are today, and their potential for reaching that based on their team. And as we are speaking about technology things, then naturally a lot of companies have most of their value maybe in their sales and marketing and other assets or supply chain, but from technology point of view, the question is there something in their technology pieces that makes them indispensable, and how they can protect, how they can be sticky to their customers, and how can they replace themselves. A very old example of that would be classical thing, like if you are building something, I don't know, let's say an Oracle database. So what Oracle will want you to do, they want you everything to write in procedures that run directly in database. And if you do that, then their moat is high. So you are a very good customer for them because you will never leave them. Or it will be very, very expensive. So that's their moat, essentially. So they will say that their practice is to write everything into database. So, I mean, logic, business logic, and everything. So that's how they protect themselves. So a lot of technology companies, in reality, have built their marketing, messaging, and also like technology guidance around their moats, and they are pushing that towards companies as well. So you have to be very careful, essentially, when you are assessing also big vendor messaging. Yeah, there's a lot of topics, but which are written here. I won't read that, but what I wanted to highlight here is if I'm doing personally myself any assessment on basically any technology things, first things that I will try to look at, well, I will try to look at all of them, but my priority where I will ask my first questions will be around deployment and hosting pieces. Because ultimately, when I know the data about how frequently companies deploying stuff, how automated or manual are the processes, I essentially will understand what is their potential for speed at the moment and how they can adapt to the market needs. Another very important thing is, especially working with startups, what you can see is that if their CTO or technology folks are doing the deployment themselves, what happens if they have burnouts? So because if they are overworked and stressed, mistakes will happen, and that might and then it doesn't matter what kind of quality assurance processes are in place or other things. So because we as humans, well, we operate as humans, so if we are doing things on our own, we might make mistakes, even if we are, and especially if we are tired. And startups, in a lot of senses, are, let's say, very taxing work environment, especially for technology people, because there's a lot of things that we need to know and do. So if these things are still happening manually, then it means that there is risk definitely here. Yeah, then also like during the process, then like follow-up questions could be also to people who are involved in the meetings would be like, could they describe their role and responsibilities? And it's also very speaking about maturity where the company is or maturity of the persons. So because they might be already saying their today's role and where the future is, and how much they essentially understand where the company is going and where they want to achieve. So we can also ask them questions, what keeps them awake at night? So because there will be always some things that could be improved and made better from just purely technical point of view. And how well they understand their architecture and its ability to scale. Because there's a lot of things where you might hit hard limits in your ability to scale. Something might just fail if you just, one day you have, let's say, 10 more or 100 more or even more customers. You get viral, you become viral hit, let's say, and then some things, a lot of things will break. And do you know what will be these things that you will need to fix essentially to deal with it? And yeah, and then you kind of reasoning behind choices. So as again, classical thing is make or buy. Can you explain why you have built it? Maybe you didn't need to build a chat system. You could just use something from the store or ready to market. One of the interesting presentations was, I think last year you had Sergey from Pipedrive coming in, and there was one Estonian event where he shared, how do you think, how many like SaaS services Pipedrive is using like daily to make their software engineering happen? Like in numbers of order of magnitude. Tens, hundreds, thousands?
Definitely not hundreds, but probably several tens.
I would say more than hundreds. So between hundreds and thousands in terms of various SaaS services.
It couldn't be right. It couldn't be even possible.
They use around 200.
They pay for, but it doesn't mean they use it, especially every day.
Yeah, well, yes. Well, yes, they pay. Yeah. But not everybody uses them naturally. But in their size, I think they might be even using with their amount of employees, but not by one individual. Yeah, but in reality, you need a lot of things which you actually, your core decision from technical leaders' point of view is what are the things that you can buy and not build, because you want to make and build things only which are adding this critical value and this critical moat for your company, and everything else initially you try at least to acquire through some other means. And buying here also might mean reusing some open source pieces and so on. However, that also comes with risks. So one of my favorite tools in last 5 years, when I was thinking about like how to design business processes and whatnot, there is a German company called Camunda. And they used to have a very nice open source version of it, which you could use. It had a lot of challenges in terms of running it in production and operationalize it. However, you could use it. And now there is a trend that a lot of these companies which are having a bit of venture capital inside of them, they are moving from open source products to like source available products. And it means that their newer versions you cannot really use as part of your things that you are building. And you might lose essentially their new innovations. And there is also same thing what's happening right now, very big, I think, in the TechCrunch Disrupt conference, which has happened already, I think. There was this big beef between WordPress authors, Automatic, and VP Engine company, which is also funded partially by Silverlight Capital. So there is, when you're reusing something, it comes with risks. If you buy or take it, let's say, for free, which is not really free, it means effort into making it operational and making it work in your context. But if you are reusing something, then that also comes with baggage, so you need to manage that as a risk and be understanding of that. Yeah, so in terms of, yeah, as I said, so all of these things create a lot of uncomfortable questions. And idea here is that if this exercise is happening to you, you just have to be more honest. Of course, that is also a balance of culture and environment, but keep in mind that nobody is perfect, and a lot of things might be working just in your case, even if you are thinking it's crazy, but when you say it out loud, for other people it actually makes sense. In your context, for this moment, you might make some kind of these decisions. So let's try to play, oh yeah, and yeah, so when you're looking at architectures, nobody expects these things. This is more for very large enterprises, and even then they never do it. So there is a website about like what kind of artifacts you can find in large companies. But yeah, but in terms of artifacts that we can find in companies, we can look at core things that we will care about, as I mentioned earlier, is reliability, scalability, and maintainability. And there is a lot of reasons for it, but ultimately it all goes down to stability. So how your system will be stable under these growth challenges. Because if you're building typically technology company, you have, or technology intensive company, it needs to provide some kind of stable services. And there is natural engineering focus on these stability things, but not always applies potentially. But most cases it will, and then how you essentially are you ready for scale and growth, and how do you get there? But that's after you have proven that market needs it, and if market doesn't need, then these things doesn't matter. And in terms of architecture artifacts, well, it doesn't matter if you have nice documentation. You could also, if you have a, as I said, in half-an-hour session, you can also draw a lot of these boxes and diagrams, and technical folks will understand how to read them. So it's actually not a problem. So if you can draw it on the fly, that's fine in whiteboarding session. Or, because these diagrams, well, these actually denote different things, but in practical sense, for me as a technical person, when I read this nice diagram, which is from Byte Go, it's about like system design blog, then it's very easy to read. And I already know all of it. I don't need these fancy graphics, but if I would read these keywords, I would understand what happens there. I would make my own assumptions about how they are using these technologies and what configurations they have, and I would ask them direct questions about these configurations that they have there. So it's very easy and very fast to get understanding of what really happens in your technologies based on these diagrams. And also then matching that against what you have actually in your source control systems and so on. So let's play a bit of game. So I have 3 questions prepared. So one is, and this generally, it's not a test because I won't show right answers. I will just show like insight in the topic. So feel free to think. But the idea here is what is critical skill to launch a meme coin today? So we know we can launch a new coin. Let's make it, I don't know, let's like Latban coin maybe, maybe already is, I don't know. So make Latban great again or something. And we launch it, so what do you need? Do we need some coding skills to do that? No. Do we need some basic Paint skills, like Microsoft Paint marketing? Yeah, probably. And probably there is already bots that can do everything for us. And there is groups for it. So easy. And also, if you're interested into like more like topics, I recommend to read this, subscribe to Peter's newsletter, Auditless, where he speaks about various blockchain topics and whatnot. But so I got idea from one of his blog articles. Then why does a startup needs to have microservices? So this is also a bit of joke answers, but still, so microservices was a trend for last 7 years after Netflix said they are using microservices, so now everything has to be microservice. And then Google was thinking about how to make everybody to use their cloud, and they said, let's invent Kubernetes, and everybody will have to rebuild their apps to work on Kubernetes because it's like Google does it, so it's great. Fixes all of the problems, or not. So do you think about in-deployment deployments across multiple teams? Do you care? Do you have multiple teams? Do you even care? When I was meeting with a lot of architects from industry, they initially build a lot of things with microservices, and then for maintainability reasons, they're deciding to go back from microservice to more monolithic architectures for a lot of their solutions. But that's very long discussions, and we could have a religious war here. Then do you want to decrease like how your applications are coupling, and can you build features independently and maybe reuse some of your features in other areas of business and so on? Do you care about these things? Do you want to scale? Do you have a lot of potential new customers coming in? Do you want to make maintenance easy? Do you have the skills for it? And maybe investors are just giving you money if you say microservices, and it sounds cool. So, good. There is some various...
You can give us some seconds to think about it. Can you switch back?
Okay.
So as far as I remember, when Elon Musk took over the former Twitter, now X, the new CTO or new VP of engineering discovered that it is a crazy number of microservices in the inside of Twitter architecture, actually. I don't remember the exact number, but it was crazy high. And the amount of engineers, number of engineers, and especially engineering managers was decreased probably 10 times, something like that. And Twitter has still available and up and running. So
actually, so the core piece of why everybody is actually doing microservices in enterprise is because there is, I guess it's very old management thing, so that a lot of people treat their management influence based on number of reports. And you can grow your influence only by growing your reports. And if you had one service which was doing one thing and you had like 5 developers, it makes no sense. You will never be promoted to group manager, so you need to have at least 30 reports. So you make that one service into 5 services. Each of them needs teams, and then you hire and you have multiple teams and build the things. And that actually happens a lot in big tech companies. They actually scale out needlessly. I think in Baltics context, we are a lot more frugal, and we don't do these things so much because we don't have that much money available. But a lot of big technology companies essentially are building things needlessly big or needlessly scalable, let's say. They over-engineer things. And as I said, no right answers, so it's a bit topical. But what I highlight, there is essentially, there is a lot of discussions also in engineering when you do it or when you don't do it. But one of the core takeaways I would say is that if you have very talented engineering team, it doesn't really matter. Whatever you're building monoliths or microservices, it absolutely doesn't matter because that team can do both. And if you cannot build microservices, you probably also cannot make nice monoliths. So in terms of technological skills, they need to, if you have very great engineering talent, they will be fine in any of these things and it will be working well. But then you will look more about, as I said, organizational aspects and deployments, and these are the core reasons for going there. And everything else is, I would say, a bit of added on top of it. Then very interesting topics about tenants. So tenancy is a concept where you are having a new customer onboarded, and how do you deal with this new customer? Are you putting all of the data in the same place with all the other customers? Are you creating some boundaries? What are these boundaries? Are they physical, logical, or whatnot? So how people are living there, and for business-to-business context, it really matters. So if you're building your software service company, let's say, how do you deal with tenancy? So do you need to care about it? Why this matters? So it's for compliance. So do you want to protect your data? Do you want to have, let's say, give to each customer their separate databases, their separate encryption keys even, allows them to manage their encryption of these things and so on. So if you're using like Microsoft 365, then Microsoft actually for each new company creates a new tenant where you can encrypt your data with your own keys and manage them. Of course, it comes with additional services, you have to pay more, but it gives you more enterprise protection. So, and these are the things that matters for larger enterprises, and it gives you ability to sell into these larger enterprises and reduce challenges from their IT departments to deploy your solutions there. That's one of the reasons why Microsoft Teams was working on Teams when it was launched as a product. And why it captured the market share so quickly from Slack is because it had already all of this compliance built in. And of course, it was easy add-on in terms of sales and license. Bill, you already had a bill from Microsoft. You just, okay, Teams, you get it for free. But initially, now it's changed, but in terms of compliance, nobody in IT was complaining about launching it because all of the data already, they know what is managing there. And it was not the case with Slack because it had different built architecture. And actually for Slack also, there was a lot of challenges with achieving compliance, what customers wanted from them. Then, adding, how do you add new features if you are having great separation? Does it make your life easier or harder? Most likely harder. How do you roll out your products globally? Because that also matters. There might be some restrictions. So if you're dealing with financial data and you're building some kind of finance product and you want to launch in, I don't know, Dubai or some Arabic countries, then you need to store everything there physically. So how do you ensure that you are launching these products that they work globally in these markets and these places according to local legislations? I think the latest challenge was for financing companies that they needed to store a lot of their data now locally in Vietnam, which was a big challenge because they didn't speak English that well. But yeah, not a problem in Emirates. Then, so how do you want to engineer it and so on? And one of the things is what's interesting about this question is that over time, as a company, you might want to change your answer, how you approach it. So in terms of how do you approach it, so you could have everything in one application where everything is there, and you just, I don't know, separate by some kind of keys in database. Then you could have one application and multiple databases. So essentially, application layer shared, but all of the data is separated by each customer, which is rather typical approach. And then you might have everything separated. So like initially, there was a Pipedrive example, when they were building, I think, the version 2 of a product, or first version, because they were loaded and they had a lot of money from investors, they just essentially spinned up a new virtual machine per each new customer, even for free ones. So it was cheaper for them than to deal with all other challenges. Another example which you can read is more about, there was a CRM company from US in like I think family rental space, RealPage, and they bought a company called Knock CRM. They work in the same industry, and the idea here is that I think RealPage went really crazy with microservices and like diverging their IT infrastructure, but with Knock it was that they had a more robust feature set, and RealPage realized they cannot innovate anymore, but they had a bigger customer base and more money, so they bought another company, which gave them ability to innovate and add new features and stay relevant in the market ultimately. So that's also a very important aspect to think about it. So, and last one from questions is, so what is the real cost of deploying your product essentially at customer location? So you are building something, you want to sell it to some enterprise customer like bank or something. Banks would be easy target. And then bank says, okay, we will buy it, we like your product, but you need to install it on our own hardware. So what does it mean? So will you give them some kind of container with your data and IP? How you will manage licensing? Do you need to have some license server which kind of opens some firewalls for you so you can check how well they are using that? Are they not abusing you? or whatnot, because you can put technical protections, you can put legal protections. We know all of the technical protections eventually go away, and there is risks with that. Then, are you having some core dependency on some vendor product, which I mentioned earlier, like example with Oracle or whatever, Snowflake, for example? Does customer needs to buy some additional licenses to run it on premises, or they just use your product? So that's also a big differentiator. In a lot of enterprises, buying additional software license might take, in terms of legal discussions and so on, I have example from Europe, which it takes on average 6 to 18 months just to get a new software product. You can get consultancy agreement in a week, but if you want to launch software in their environment, it takes 18 months. So, and it's when they already are committed to buying it. And out of them, at least half of that or more is legal lawyer discussions, ultimately. Then integrate, so how do you enable these people not to create another account and have less passwords or some of these things? And that also comes with a lot of their compliance requirements. So do you have single sign-on? Can you integrate with their corporate identity providers and whatnot? So that's a very easy way. And of course, there is always an option that you can just put some physical hardware box, which you deploy in their data center, and then you are responsible for getting the box to them, and they get a box and plug it.
A nightmare of
Yes.
maintenance.
Yes. Maintenance, new versions, and everything that becomes, so they are stuck with version which you put there. And for you to give them new goodies that you have developed as part of product, this limits you, and also this limits you. So Docker container is actually barely better than a box in reality. So the best way probably is answer C, actually, from my point of view. But also depends, for answer C, there will be a bit more topics how to get there. Then when we are thinking about software, we are sometimes thinking that it's easy, just developers spin up something, they write some code, and life is easy. So this is actual templates that we use at our work, but it actually gives you a good idea that for development, you need actually to have a lot of tools that you use to be productive. So like you need to start with where you are gathering your requirements and needs. Are you using some kind of tool where you write it? How do you get customer feedback as well for your requirements? Then do you build some design mockups in some kind of tool? Then where developers are working, where your source is stored in some kind of source control system. Then how it gets deployed, through what kind of automations, and like do you have some test automation suites? How do you test load? Then how do you test like where you deploy, what is the infrastructure on? Where do you store your assets that you have compiled and built and reuse later on, and all of these things, and then how you monitor things, and yada yada. So there is a lot of topics which are important, and in terms of tooling, like technical team is able to answer typically these questions super fast, within 10 minutes. So, and that also gives you understanding of maturity of the team and what kind of tooling they have adopted for running and operating the things. If you are looking at working with partners, it's also important to understand who is the entity who is responsible for managing and running these things. So if you're outsourcing something, then there might be some things which are managed by outsourcing partners and which are things which are managed by companies themselves. From bad things that could be finds here in terms of, so as I said, word class is easy if you know what word class is. So in terms of word class things is, do you have some test automation in place? Can you deploy with confidence without manual testing? Essentially, that's the question. Or you have enough customers. So like if you already have customers in millions, then you might have also some test automation, but you also have ability to see metrics if you see bad behaviors coming from users. Clean code is a bit controversial one, because as a developer myself, then, well, you can adopt it, but it's actually more meant if you are, let's say, working with outsourcing partners from cheap countries, then you would ask that they follow it, but you also need to check what they're writing there. And then you don't have architecture, or you don't understand from technology point of view what is your business domain. So if you are in highly compliance business, why are you not protecting your data? Because in a lot of cases it's only about trust, and if you have one data breach, then that might be end of your business. In terms of US companies, then in US markets, if you have external certification like SOC 2, it might help you. But you need to check with your customers if they care about it, because a lot of service companies are running according to SOC standards. So if you already have external certification which proves it, then it might be easier essentially for you to deploy there. But don't do before customers confirm it. Because most cases, sometimes it's also a question of growth and optimizing later on. Then one of very interesting things which I would highlight is that you need to have a lot more understanding about your user experience and your customers potentially than maybe technical materials. So if you have like a lot of technical diagrams but you don't have anything on your user journeys or customer pain points or mockups and these things, then that's also bad because that shows that you have not done your customer research enough. So robustness of customer research actually might be even more important than technologies at some early stages. And then depending on industries, yes, so if you are in healthcare in the US, then you care about your HIPAA compliance levels and whatnot. But SOC 2 and this ISO thing are interchangeable, more or less. So this is more US thing, this is more European thing, but yeah. So GDPR in Europe, whenever we are launching something, especially for multinationals, you cannot get anything out of the door if it's not GDPR compliant, because risks are just simply too high. I have not really paid attention if we are having a lot of cases in Latvia about GDPR violations and the fines which are being put here, but in Europe at large, GDPR violations are taken very seriously and they can actually break companies. And then there is, and then in terms of security testing and threat modeling, it might sound imposing, but generally speaking, security testing is also something that engineers also like that is being done against their products, at least once per year. There is a rather fixed cost to that, so it's a rather standardized product in industry. So if you find a good security partner company, you know it's a flat fee and how much they will ask. If you don't find the scope for them, so they can test your products and you will get a lot of valuable learnings for, let's say, a couple of weeks of effort. And it's not too expensive actually, especially if you're buying locally here in Latvia. Threat modeling exercise, typo here, is actually, I put an image that shows what the results of it look. It's also something rather simple where you just think from boundaries and what would be the vectors where somebody could hack you and hack your application, what are the spaces where bad actors might be acting against you. So in reality, it sounds more imposing than really is if you have some expertise or somebody to guide you through this exercise. Yeah, so there will be some skeletons in closets always, that's fine. What matters is your plans. Will you take action on it or not? Also answer is, I don't care about this thing today because there are some other things to be solved. Is absolutely fine. I'm aware of it, but you might not always take action on everything because you still need to, prioritization is the key for anything. And in terms of technical depth, it's also, so it is sometimes it might be a challenge, but then what's interesting is, do you keep your promises? If you're saying, oh, I will address it, it's better to say that I won't address if you don't plan to address it, and only if you are planning to do something about it, then you might address it, and then you kind of put your promises in. Because as we know, all of these relationships are typically multi-year long, and it's a people business at the end of the day. And at one moment, people will see one snapshot of your life, and in 3 years, they might see different snapshot of this life. And they will compare it with past, essentially. So that's also very important. What happens today might have consequences down the road. So that was it from my end. Yeah, I'm a bit, maybe some questions.
First of all, thank you for great presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, any questions to the speaker? The topic was difficult, but extremely interesting, at least for me. So probably I start with a brief question, Igor. What can you suggest, once again, if, let's say, Artyom's is going to invest in a technology startup, let's say here in Latvia.
Okay.
What to start from, what to do next, and how not to be fooled by tech people.
Fooled by tech people, wow. So as I said, actually I would ask them about their, one is ask and then try to see if there's some evidence, let's say, on, as I mentioned earlier about the deployments. So if they have built something, how frequently they're updating it, what are their updates, and again they show like what are the changes they have made in these updates. And that would be one. And of course, if you are, depends, you can also look at the people experiences. So if it's not bad that they are young, so it's actually great. But it's more about essentially, and if they're young, then they probably will be working a lot more and putting a lot more passion inside of things and so on. But they might need some external consultation on side things. They might not need additional developers, but what is their ability also to reach out to wider network to solve some of the challenges? Because a lot of things that people early on in engineering careers struggle with is that there's a lot of things where there are default answers, which are very easy to obtain if you are having a bit of mentoring around you. So that might be also very important to understand what's their network of ability to reach out for help from other people in industry. Are they attending some events, or are they having friends who are working other places and so on? What else? Yeah, and then, as I mentioned, these tools give you a lot of evidence on where they are in terms of their journey. In terms of pedigree pieces, there is a bit of bias. If people are working from consultancy companies, and it's a sad reality, is that in consultancy, a lot of things that people are doing are sometimes a lot over-engineered. So if they have that consulting experience, and the question is, can they make it simpler, stupider, essentially? Because a lot of consulting business is built on essentially generating work for itself as well, same as any bureaucracy, I would say. I remember when I was working in Microsoft, we had an event down like next to Spice, and I did a talk on DevOps, and before I gave a talk, I received email, if there are consultants in the room, don't speak about DevOps, because it's endless money printing machine for them. Mm-hmm. Because people change and there's churn, so a lot of these trendy engineering things need to be taken kind of in context of that. So so background matters for people, but then a lot of background also might be bad and give bad habits to people. So, and then that needs to be managed, yeah.
Maybe you have some, if you are in your business, you know, yeah. Every question, if you ask question, yeah. From your field, you could, from answer you could understand it's like blah, 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 or real, because now, from my experience, not very big experience, but I do other many businesses. And for example, if people come and say, I want to really invest in real estate, there are big profits, I could ask few questions that I could understand. For example, it's like people don't understand the same in restaurant or some stock market. You know, now it's like popular to say the startup is like modern world. It's not, but it's really it's business. Many people are working not to establish startup, to establish business, but only like to establish. Like I will buy a good notebook. I will say that I'm a startupper. I have fundraising. I see this all rounds, and they are don't understand how to develop this business. This is main problem. Maybe you have some.
So yeah. So I would say the question is, what are your prototypes, and can I see something from your product? It doesn't have to be working perfectly, but it has to, what can I see about the product? And then if product is already in some kind of launch state, as I said about deployments, what matters? And then general question to any people who are working with the technologies is, how do you learn? Because IT is moving very rapidly. It's not because ideas are changing. Actually, ideas are rather stable, I would say. After some years in industry, you are rather comfortable around things. But technologies, how you apply these ideas and how you are using are constantly changing. So there is a new technology stack, I would say cycles are something like 18 months. So you need to be always keeping yourself up to date in terms of side reading and consuming material. So how do people learn, and how do then they apply these things? And maybe another question is, let's say, in terms of technology pieces is what they have dropped maybe, what are experiments they have conducted to their technology or product, and what are the things they have dropped or disregarded, because there will be always certain amount of waste that is produced, and if they're saying, oh, we are building everything perfectly, it's like straight line thing, it's a lie.
No, for example, to ask an investor.
Artyom,
Yeah.
let's take a brief break for coffee, for getting some rest, and to continue conversation in small groups.
Yeah.
Let's
okay.
do that. Once again, thank you so much for this brilliant speech. It was difficult. It was hard, but once again,